tonight, a new wave of bizarre, alarming battlefield claims is rippling across the Russia-Ukraine war. Claims so severe that, if even partially true, they signal a brutal shift in momentum and a dangerous widening of the conflict. Reports circulating from multiple directions describe a concentrated Russian strike campaign, aimed not at symbolic targets, but at the nervous system of Ukraine's war effort. Ammunition stockpiles, armored vehicle concentrations, and command hubs. The kinds of targets that don't just make headlines, they change what a military can do tomorrow morning. And at the center of these reports is one headline-grabbing assertion that Russian strikes have caused mass casualties, up to 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers, in a short window alongside heavy losses in equipment and leadership nodes. Ukraine and Russia frequently dispute casualty figures, and independent verification is difficult in real time, but the pattern being described is what matters. This is not framed as punishment or messaging. It is framed as preparation. Here's what's being reported and why it's raising alarms. The first major theme is targeting strategy. Instead of focusing primarily on power infrastructure or broad pressure campaigns, the strikes being described are aimed at war-sustaining assets. Ammunition depots, rail yards used for staging supplies, and clusters of armored vehicles. One set of reports points to a rail hub where a large ammunition reserve, described as hundreds of tons, may have been hit and destroyed. Again, the exact tonnage is contested and hard to confirm, but the implication is straightforward. Ukraine has faced persistent ammunition constraints, and a successful strike on a major storage site would intensify those constraints immediately. And if armored vehicles were also destroyed in the same strike window, as some accounts claim, that compounds the pressure, because replacing heavy armor is not as simple as sending another shipment of small arms. Heavy equipment takes time, training, logistics, and maintenance capacity, things that are already strained in wartime. The second theme is command and control disruption. Multiple claims suggest that Russian strikes have hit what are described as brigade-level command locations, targets that, if accurately identified, can be devastating. Why? Because even when a unit still has fighters and gear, it can lose cohesion if communications, leadership, and planning nodes are shattered. Reports have attached big numbers to this, claims of strikes affecting numerous headquarters and resulting in large casualty totals. Those figures are hotly contested in information warfare, but the concept is not. Wars often pivot when one side can reliably find and strike leadership and logistics nodes faster than the other side can adapt. If an attacker is consistently hitting the places where decisions are made, then the defender is forced to operate more blindly, more locally, and more slowly. And that can show up on the front lines as delayed reinforcements, confused withdrawals, or stalled counterattacks. The third theme is air defense erosion, and this is crucial. Some reports describe the destruction of air defense systems, particularly older long-range platforms and supporting radars, along with shorter-range systems meant to defend them. If that's accurate, it doesn't just mean more vulnerability in the abstract. It means that moving troops, moving armor, and massing for offensives becomes much more dangerous. And when air defense coverage thins, logistics convoys become easier to hit, artillery positions become easier to map and strike, and command posts become easier to target. Even if Russia does not control the skies completely, a reduction in air defense density can still provide an attacker with more windows of opportunity. Brief moments where drones, missiles, or aircraft can operate with less risk. And in modern war, those windows are often enough. Now, alongside these battlefield claims, another storyline has been circulating: Ukraine's use of drones and strikes deeper into contested or Russian-held areas, moves that some analysts describe as symbolic or psychological rather than operationally decisive. For example, reports of a drone strike hitting an oil-related facility in Crimea generated dramatic visuals: black smoke, fire, strong imagery. But the argument made by many military observers is that one burning tank, while visually powerful, does not necessarily translate into immediate frontline advantage, unless it measurably affects fuel distribution to combat units. In information warfare, optics matter, and both sides know it. A dramatic fireball can become a rallying clip, while a quiet strike on a rail yard that destroys ammunition can change the war without producing a single viral video. So what does this all add up to strategically? If these reports reflect the real direction of operations, then Russia is signaling that it is trying to shape the battlefield for a larger ground phase. Yeah, watch for the logic. Degrade air defense, hit ammunition stockpiles, disrupt leadership nodes, and then exploit the resulting weakness when conditions allow. That is the classic sequence for setting conditions ahead of a major push. And it also fits the seasonal reality that commanders on both sides track obsessively: terrain and mobility. When ground conditions are poor, mud, thaw, waterlogged fields, mechanized offensives can stall or become extremely costly. When conditions improve, the side that has preserved more armor, more ammunition, and more coordination is better positioned to move. But there's a wider danger here, and it's not only about trenches and rail yards. The wider danger is escalation, because once a war becomes framed not just as a territorial struggle, but as a contest of strategic endurance, the pressure grows on both sides to widen the set of tools they use. We've already seen growing debates over what kinds of weapons should be transferred, what kinds of strikes should be authorized, what kinds of targets should be considered legitimate, and what risks are acceptable. That debate intensifies whenever headlines claim massive casualties or major breakthroughs, because political systems respond to perceived momentum. If one side is believed to be losing, the pressure rises to do something bigger. If one side is believed to be winning, the temptation rises to press harder. And that brings us to the information war itself. In conflicts like this, casualty numbers are among the most contested claims, sometimes inflated for morale, sometimes minimized to preserve confidence, sometimes weaponized to influence foreign support. When you hear a number like 1,000 killed attached to a strike narrative, you should treat it as a claim, not a courtroom fact, unless it's supported by multiple credible and independent confirmations. But you should also not dismiss it as meaningless. Why? Because the very appearance of such claims, repeated, amplified, and tied to a strategic story, can reshape diplomacy, funding debates, and public opinion. Information war is not a sideshow. It is part of how modern wars are fought. So where does Ukraine fit into this picture if the battlefield is indeed shifting toward deeper pressure? Ukraine's challenge becomes twofold: survival and adaptation. Survival means protecting critical nodes, ammunition sites, command hubs, air defense assets through dispersion, camouflage, mobility, and deception. Adaptation means altering how forces are massed and moved and how headquarters operate. If command posts become too targetable, they decentralize. If depots become too targetable, supplies are dispersed. If air defense systems become too targetable, they become more mobile, more layered, more unpredictable. This becomes a cat and mouse contest. Surveillance, strike, concealment, relocation, over and over. On the Russian side, the strategic wager appears to be, if they can maintain superior reconnaissance and strike capacity, they can force Ukraine into a permanent defensive crouch, where every attempt to organize an offensive becomes expensive or impossible. But that wager has risks too. Long wars grind down economies, manpower, equipment stocks, and political patience. The more intense the strike campaign, the more it invites counterstrikes, sabotage attempts, drone raids, and escalation pressures. And the more the war is framed as existential, the more unpredictable the choices become. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: NATO, foreign aid, and the political theater surrounding it. Discussions about funding, weapons packages, and thresholds for escalation have become part of the daily rhythm of this war. Supporters of aid argue that Ukraine's defense is crucial for European security and international norms. Critics argue that aid has become an open-ended commitment with unclear end goals and enormous cost. But whatever side you're on, the battlefield reality remains. Ammunition, air defense, and armor matter. If the reported strikes have significantly degraded Ukraine's stockpiles and leadership nodes, then even large aid packages take time to translate into immediate battlefield change. That lag between political decision and battlefield effect can be decisive. And that's why nights like tonight matter, because a single burst of reports, whether fully accurate or partially exaggerated, can still reveal a genuine shift in how the war is being fought, not only to win territory, but to break the opponent's ability to coordinate, resupply, and endure. So here's what to watch next, very closely. First, do we see corroboration of large-scale ammunition losses, either through official statements, satellite imagery, or patterns in frontline artillery rates? Second, do we see increased evidence of degraded Ukrainian air defense coverage, more successful strikes, more drones getting through, more pressure on key transit corridors? Third, do we see signs of a coming ground push, force movements, intensified reconnaissance, escalating strikes on bridging points and logistics routes? And fourth, do we see political escalation? New weapons thresholds crossed, new geographic lines blurred, or new rhetoric that narrows the space for negotiation? Because if the strike campaign being described is real in its effects, then this war is not simply continuing, it is tightening into a phase where the focus shifts from who holds what village to who can still function as an army when the next shock hits. And that is the kind of phase that produces faster collapses, sharper escalations, and higher risks of miscalculation. Final thought. If the war is entering a stage where command nodes, depots, and air defenses are being systematically targeted, then the most important question is no longer whose narrative sounds stronger on TV. It's which side can absorb the next blow, adapt in days, not weeks, and keep operating under pressure. Because in the brutal mathematics of modern warfare, the side that loses coordination and supply doesn't just lose ground. It can lose the war's direction overnight, and the world will wake up to a new reality before diplomacy has time to catch up.